That night, as my mother's voice cut through the laughter at the dinner table, I realized something. It wasn't disappointment I heard anymore. It was pride in disguise. Because for the first time, she was about to see what her failure of a daughter had become. But let me take you back to the beginning of that night. The night my family tried to cut me off, not knowing they'd been living under my shadow all along. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. The annual family dinner was in full swing. Crystal glasses clinked. Soft piano music drifted through the country club hall. My sister, Clara, was at the center of attention, her laughter echoing louder than anyone else's. She had just been promoted, again, and my parents beamed with pride as if she'd conquered the world. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, staring at the slice of lemon floating in my water. I knew what was coming next. It came every year. And right on cue, my mother turned to me. "So, Sarah," she said, voice smooth but sharp enough to cut glass, "are you still doing that little online thing?" I smiled, not because it was funny, but because I had been waiting for this. If only they knew what that little online thing had become. Before I could answer, Clara leaned in, her perfume thick and sweet like a warning. "Oh, come on, Mom. Be nice. Maybe one day she'll post something that actually pays the bills." Laughter rippled across the table. That polished, fake kind of laughter people use when they think they're better than you. My father set his fork down, his tone heavy with judgment. "Sarah, your mother and I have decided it's time for tough love. You're 32. It's time to stop playing around and get a real job." The words fell like stones in the quiet air. And in that moment, as my phone buzzed softly in my lap, showing a message from my CFO confirming the biggest acquisition of my life, I realized something. This wasn't just dinner. This was Judgment Day. And my revenge had just begun. I didn't plan to expose everything that night. Honestly, I just wanted to eat my salad, survive the usual humiliation, and leave before dessert. But something in the way Clara smirked, that subtle, practiced smirk of superiority, snapped the last thread of my patience. "Sarah," my father said again, this time more firmly, "you're old enough to take responsibility for your life." I looked at them, my perfect family, and felt a strange calm settle over me. They had no idea that the trading algorithm Clara's entire department relied on had been designed by the very daughter they pitted. "Dad," I said softly, "I understand." He smiled, relieved, thinking he had gotten through to me. "But before you continue," I added, pulling my laptop from my bag, "I just want to show you something." His smile froze. "Sarah, not at the table." I opened the screen anyway. The logo of Sterling Technologies glowed against the white tablecloth like a secret finally coming to light. "See that number?" I said, turning the laptop toward them. "That's my company valuation. $500 million. Clara's fork clattered against her plate. My mother blinked rapidly. "That can't be right," she whispered. "Oh, it's very right," I said. "We just finalized the acquisition of Morgan Financial an hour ago." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was electric. For the first time in years, my family had no words. And for the first time, I didn't need theirs. It's strange how fast arrogance dies in silence. One moment, they were laughing. The next, the air around us grew so heavy I could almost hear their hearts pounding. Mom's wine glass trembled in her hand. $500 million, she stammered. "Sarah, are you joking?" "No, Mom," I said, my voice calm. "I'm done joking." I clicked again, showing real-time numbers on the dashboard, company value, employees, divisions. Every detail reflected on their stunned faces. Dad leaned forward, trying to steady his tone. "Wait, that name, Sterling Technologies. You mean to tell me?" "Yes." I cut in gently. "That's my company."
"The one you thought was a blog."
Clara's eyes darted across the screen. "That's impossible. We just started using Sterling system at my firm last quarter." I smiled. "Then you already work for me, dear sister." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For a brief moment, I saw every insult she'd ever thrown at me reflected back in her eyes, and for once, she had nothing left to say. The waiter returned quietly, placing a fresh glass of water beside me. "Miss Sterling," he said softly, "the manager wants to confirm everything is satisfactory with your usual table." Dad blinked. "Miss Sterling." "Yes, sir," the waiter replied politely. "Your daughter owns the club." That's when Mom glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. I didn't flinch. There's a special kind of silence that follows disbelief. It's the kind that strips people bare when their perfect masks finally fall apart. My father's face turned pale. My mother pressed a shaking hand to her chest. Clara stared at me like I had just rewritten the laws of reality. "You own this place?" Mom whispered. I nodded. "For a year now. I bought it when it was on the verge of bankruptcy." I leaned back, enjoying the disbelief sinking into their faces. I kept it quiet.
Didn't want to steal your spotlight.
Clara's jaw tightened. "You're lying. There's no way." I swiveled the laptop to her again, showing the ownership documents. "Check the signatures." Her lips parted, then closed. It was delicious, watching her pride crumble piece by piece. The same pride she had used to humiliate me for years. Dad finally spoke, voice trembling. "Sarah, how did you even start something like this?" I smiled faintly. "Remember Grandma Inheritance? The one you told me not to waste on an online dream." I paused. "I didn't waste it. I invested it. And I built something real while you all looked away." The room suddenly felt too small, too warm, like truth itself was suffocating them. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. They didn't see the years I spent awake at 3 a.m., coding in the dark. They didn't see the nights I skipped meals to pay developers. They didn't see me collapse at my desk when investors said no for the 10th time in a week. But they did see me drive an old car and wear simple clothes. And in their world, that was all the proof they needed that I'd failed. "Sarah," Mom said weakly, "why didn't you ever tell us?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. I looked at Clara, her diamond earrings catching the soft chandelier light. Every dinner, every conversation, it was always the same. "Get a real job, Sarah. Stop playing on the internet. You mocked what you didn't understand." Dad's lips tightened. "We were trying to help you." "No," I said firmly. "You were trying to mold me into someone who fit your version of success."
My phone buzzed again.
Another message from my CFO, Goldman requesting urgent licensing meeting. Clara's company. I smiled. "By the way, Clara," I said softly, "how's that new trading platform your team's been using?" Her face went cold, because deep down, she already knew the truth. "Wait," Clara whispered, scrolling through her phone. "You mean Sterling, that's you?" "Yes," I said. "That's me." Her breath hitched. "You're the reason our systems changed? I'm the reason your systems work." The air crackled. The pride that had always filled her voice vanished completely. I turned the laptop one more time, this time, to a page displaying Sterling Technologies' major clients.
Banks.
Trading firms. Financial giants. Clara's employer was on the top of the list. "This can't be real," Dad muttered. "It's as real as the salad in front of you," I replied. "You just never looked past the surface long enough to see it." Mom's voice quivered. "But you live in the guest house. You drive that old car." "Because I wanted to," I said. "I wanted to stay invisible long enough to see who really saw me for me." Turns out, it wasn't my family. The silence that followed was heavier than shame. It was realization, and it hurt them more than any words I could say.
I didn't shout.
I didn't gloat. I simply let the numbers on the screen do the talking. And that, I realized, was true power, when you don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Dad cleared his throat again, desperate to find footing in a conversation that had completely slipped away from him. "500 million," he said. "Sarah, that's incredible." "Incredible," I repeated softly. "That's one word for it." Mom looked at me, her perfect poise cracked. "Sweetheart, we didn't know." "You didn't care to know," I corrected. Her eyes fell to her plate. It wasn't anger I felt, not anymore. It was something colder, sharper. A quiet satisfaction that years of dismissal had finally met their reckoning. The same people who mocked me were now realizing they lived under my roof, literally and financially. And the best part? The night had only just begun. When the truth finally breaks through, it doesn't explode. It seeps, slow and steady, until there's no air left to breathe. That's what I watched happen to my family at that table. Clara sat frozen, scrolling through articles about Sterling Technologies. Every headline confirmed what she didn't want to believe. Dad tried to act calm, pretending to analyze opportunities. Mom just stared, her world unraveling in silence. I closed the laptop and said softly, "I think I'll move out of the guest house." Dad blinked. "Move out? Where will you go?" "My penthouse," I said. "The one at the Alexandria. I own it." The guest house was just for show. Their faces said it all: confusion, disbelief, and then something darker: regret. It was the first time I'd ever seen regret in their eyes. And that was worth every sleepless night I'd ever endured. The rest of the club carried on: music, laughter, clinking glasses. But at our table, it felt like the world had stopped. Mom whispered, "You really own this place?" "Yes," I said. "And a few others. You might want to check who manages your mortgage, by the way." Her face paled. "Our mortgage? Sterling Properties," I said simply. "That's also mine." Clara looked up, trembling. "You bought our house?" "I bought the entire neighborhood," I replied. "Some investments are personal." I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it because they needed to know that the person they once pitted now held their world together. Dad rubbed his temples. "Sarah, we made mistakes." I smiled faintly. "Yes, you did.
But don't worry.
I won't cut you off." The irony hung in the air like perfume gone sour. By the time dessert arrived, no one touched their plates. Mom stared into her untouched glass. Clara's hands trembled. Dad just looked lost, like he was meeting his daughter for the first time. "Sarah," Mom whispered, "why are you doing this to us?" I looked at her calmly. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm just showing you what you refuse to see." I stood up, closing my laptop. The waiter immediately stepped forward. "Miss Sterling, your car is ready." I nodded, then looked at my family. "Tomorrow," I said quietly, "you'll get an invitation. Dinner. My home. Come if you want to see who I really am." As I walked out of that dining hall, the same one I owned, I felt lighter than I had in years. Revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it arrives in silence, wrapped in success, and speaks with the calm of truth. And my truth had just begun to speak. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my office windows, touching the edges of my desk like quiet approval. My phone buzzed nonstop: journalists, investors, and one unread message from my mother. "Dinner? Tonight? Are you serious?"
Yes.
I was serious. For years, I'd sat through their polished dinners pretending to be less than I was. Now, it was time to serve them a meal flavored with truth. My assistant, Naomi, looked up from her screen. "Should I prepare the penthouse for guests?" "Yes," I said. "Family only. Keep it elegant but simple. I want them to see reality, not a show." Naomi nodded, understanding the undertone. This wasn't about revenge through humiliation. It was about clarity, raw, unavoidable clarity. By noon, the table was set. By evening, the skyline glowed beneath the setting sun. I stood by the window, watching the city that once ignored me pulse with my success. Each light below represented a deal, a project, a sleepless night that had led me here. At 7 sharp, the elevator chimed. When the doors opened, my parents and Clara stepped out, eyes wide, mouths half open, already overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what they were stepping into. "Welcome home," I said softly. They didn't speak. They just stared at the marble floors, the glass walls, the city beneath them. That's when I realized this wasn't just a dinner. This was a reckoning. My mother stood frozen at the entrance, clutching her purse like a shield. "This is all yours?" she whispered. "Yes," I replied. "Every inch." She turned slowly, eyes glistening as she took in the art, the grand piano, the view that stretched endlessly across the city. My father exhaled heavily. "Sarah, this place, it's beyond anything I imagined." "I know," I said softly. "You never tried to imagine." Clara drifted toward my office, where the glass walls shimmered with reflection. Screens lined the walls, displaying global markets, real-time numbers, and news alerts. My world laid bare. "Are these all yours?" she asked, voice small. I nodded. "Just the public ones. The private holdings are on another system."
She turned to me.
"You built all this while we were laughing at you." "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "While you laughed, I built. While you judged, I worked. While you pitted me, I was learning how to own everything you worshipped. No anger, no shouting, just calm truth." And that silence, that moment when they finally saw me, was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Dinner began quietly. No bragging, no gossip, no false smiles. Just forks scraping softly against china and the hum of the city outside. Finally, my father spoke. "Sarah, I owe you an apology." I didn't respond. I just looked at him, waiting for honesty to fill the space between us.
He sighed.
"We were wrong. All these years, we thought we were guiding you, but we were holding you back. You were stronger than we gave you credit for." My mother nodded faintly, tears clinging to her lashes. "We judged what we didn't understand." I leaned back. "You judged what didn't look like success to you." Silence. Heavy, fragile, full of regret. "I didn't need your support," I continued. "I just wanted your belief."
But now,
"I'm thankful you doubted me, because that doubt became my fuel." Clara looked down at her plate. "You've proven your point." I smiled softly. "Oh, Clara, this isn't about proving a point. It's about reminding you, appearances mean nothing. Substance is everything." After dinner, I guided them through the penthouse. We passed the art gallery, paintings they'd once admired from a distance, now hanging in my hallway. We entered the media room, where a wall of global news feeds quietly tracked my businesses in real time. Dad paused at the display of awards. Technology Innovator of the Year, 40 under 40, Financial Excellence Award. I shrugged. They don't mean much. I keep them here because the world seems to like symbols. Clara lingered at a photo of me shaking hands with a world leader. "You never told us," she whispered. "You never asked," I said. We moved into the study, shelves filled with books, contracts, and memories. "This is where I built it," I said quietly. "Right here, alone, while you thought I was wasting my time." My mother touched the back of a chair. "And we never came to see you." "No," I said. "You only came when you thought I needed saving." That was the truth that cut the deepest. Clara was quieter than usual. Gone was the confident, arrogant woman who once dismissed me at every turn. Now, she was just a sister, lost, small, and strangely human. She followed me into my office again. "You're buying my division, aren't you?" she asked finally. "Already bought it," I said. "You'll see the announcement tomorrow morning." Her face went pale. "So I work for you now?" I nodded.
technically, yes.
"But don't worry. I'm not firing you." She swallowed hard.
Why?
"After everything, why would you keep me?" I smiled faintly. "Because revenge isn't about destruction, Clara. It's about understanding who truly deserves another chance." Her eyes welled up. "I treated you horribly." "Yes," I said gently. "You did. But I learned something from you, how people behave when they think you're powerless. That's knowledge money can't buy." She nodded slowly, guilt swallowing her pride. For the first time, I saw her not as my rival, but as my lesson. My father lingered by the window, the city lights reflecting off his glasses. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I didn't mean to make you feel small." I walked up beside him. "But you did." He nodded, his voice heavy with age and realization. I thought success looked one way: corner offices, suits, the right connections. I didn't see what was right in front of me. That's because you weren't looking for me, I said softly. You were looking for yourself through me. He turned to face me, his pride broken, his tone gentle. You've become everything I hoped for, and more. For a moment, the little girl in me, the one who once just wanted her father's approval, felt seen. But then I remembered the nights I'd cried alone, building something no one believed in. And I realized his approval didn't matter anymore. I'd already become everything I needed to be. When my mother cried, it wasn't loud. It was quiet, like shame finally finding its voice. I should have believed in you, she whispered. All those times you came to dinner. We laughed at you. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said softly. You hurt me by pretending care was control, by dressing judgment as advice, by loving conditionally. She wiped her tears. You're still my daughter. I always was, I said. Even when you didn't want to claim me. Her lip trembled. Can we start over? I hesitated, then smiled faintly. We can. But it won't be like before. I don't live in your shadow anymore. You live in mine. Her eyes widened at the words, but they weren't cruel. They were true. Sometimes, truth sounds like thunder when spoken softly. Before they left that night, I handed my father a small envelope. What's this? He asked. Your mortgage, I said. Paid off. You'll find the deed inside. You're free from the bank now, but technically, the property belongs to Sterling Holdings. His eyes widened. You bought our house? Yes, I said calmly. 2 years ago. You refinanced it through one of my shell companies. Consider this my way of ensuring you'll never lose it. He looked at me, speechless. Don't thank me, I said. Just remember what it means. The one you thought needed your support was the one supporting you all along. That envelope wasn't just paper. It was a symbol, the balance of power restored. As they prepared to leave, Clara turned back at the door. Sarah, she said softly, what do you want from us now? I smiled faintly. Nothing. That's the beauty of it. She frowned. Then why show us all this? Because, I said, sometimes people need to see what they lost before they can understand what they still have. Mom touched my hand. We lost your trust, didn't we? I nodded. You did. But maybe, with time, you can earn it back. They left quietly, humbled, fragile, changed. And as the elevator doors closed, I felt peace settle in my chest for the first time in years. Revenge didn't taste bitter. It tasted like freedom. When the night finally ended, I stood alone on my balcony, the city glittering beneath me. Every light was a reminder of what I'd built when no one believed in me. I thought about the girl I used to be, scared, small, desperate for validation. She died the day I stopped asking for permission to shine. My phone buzzed, another message from the CFO. Goldman CEO requests meeting. Offer expected to exceed $700 million valuation. I smiled to myself. The world was finally catching up to who I'd been all along. And as the wind swept through my hair, I whispered to the night, sometimes, the best revenge isn't showing people what you've become. It's reminding them who you always were. The next morning, the sun rose softer than usual, as if even the sky wanted to stay quiet after the storm that had passed. My phone lit up before I even poured my first coffee. Headlines everywhere. Unknown tech giant revealed. Sarah Cole, founder of Sterling Holdings. Mystery investor turns out to be one of the youngest female billionaires. My inbox flooded. Interviews, congratulations, invitations. And there it was, a text from Clara. I saw the news. I'm proud of you.
I mean it this time.
I stared at the message for a long moment. Pride from her lips felt foreign. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something real. Still, part of me couldn't help but smile. Because the same people who once dismissed me were now rewriting my story in their favor. That's the funny thing about success. It changes how people remember you. At work, the atmosphere had shifted. People who used to glance past me in boardrooms now stood a little straighter when I entered. Naomi leaned close and whispered, You're trending again. Third day in a row. I laughed softly. Let them talk. I didn't build this to be liked. I built it to be unshakable. But not everyone was happy. The old CEO of a rival company, the same man who once told me I'd never last a year, had called for a meeting. Sarah, Naomi said cautiously, he's not exactly friendly. Good, I said, standing. I prefer honest enemies to fake friends. When he arrived, his handshake was stiff. You made quite the splash, he said. I smiled calmly.
Oh, that?
That was just breakfast.
His laugh faltered.
He knew then I wasn't playing small anymore. This wasn't revenge through words. It was revenge through presence. That evening, my phone rang again. It was Mom. Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. I saw the news. Your father can't stop watching the interviews. I waited, sipping tea, letting her fill the silence. You sounded so confident, she said. You've grown into something we never imagined. I smiled faintly. You mean something you never allowed yourselves to imagine?
She didn't argue.
For once, she just listened. Then, quietly. Can we visit again? Not for business. Just family. I hesitated. The old pain stirred, but forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't weakness. It was control. Yes, I said finally, but not tonight. I want you to visit when you're ready to meet me, not the idea of me. The line went quiet, but I could feel her tears through the silence. Progress, slow and fragile, had begun. Days turned into weeks, and my story spread further than I'd imagined. People called it the revenge of silence, a woman who rose without noise, who conquered without cruelty. Messages poured in from strangers. You gave me courage. I started my business today because of you. For the first time, revenge didn't feel like fire. It felt like light. I realized something profound. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't against people. It's against the doubt they planted inside you. And by succeeding, you don't just silence them. You silence the voice in your own head that used to agree with them. Then came the day Clara called me, her voice trembling. Sarah, she said, they're restructuring my division. I think they're letting me go. My chest tightened. The same company I now controlled was cutting her loose. Do you want me to intervene? I asked. She hesitated.
No.
I deserve this. I built my career on arrogance. Maybe it's time I start over. Her honesty startled me. The old Clara would have fought, manipulated, or cried. But this one? She sounded human. Then start over, I said gently. Not for me. For you. And for the first time in years, she whispered. Thank you, Sarah. That's when I knew my revenge was complete. Because the person who once looked down on me was now learning to look inward. A month later, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a global conference. The same event I'd once been denied entry to because startups weren't relevant. As I stepped onto the stage, the lights were blinding, but my voice was steady. I built Sterling Holdings out of failure. I began. But not the kind of failure people fear, the kind of failure people give you when they underestimate you. Faces leaned forward. Cameras flashed. I was told I wasn't practical enough, strong enough, connected enough. But I was enough. They just couldn't see it. Applause erupted. And as I smiled into that sea of faces, I realized I wasn't speaking just for me. I was speaking for everyone who'd ever been laughed at for dreaming differently. After the conference, I drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the hum of the engine and my thoughts. Success is loud, but healing is quiet. For years, I thought revenge would fix the ache. But sitting there, beneath the glow of passing streetlights, I understood. Revenge only clears space for peace. It doesn't replace it. When I reached home, I didn't look at the skyline. I looked inward, and for the first time, the reflection didn't scare me. I had become the woman I once needed to see. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. It was from my mother. Sarah, we raised you to believe strength came from control. But you've shown us it comes from grace. You've taught me that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I'm proud of you. I love you, Mom. I held that letter against my heart and closed my eyes. Sometimes the apology you waited a lifetime for comes quietly, in ink and paper, not in words shouted across a table. And sometimes that's enough. Months later, we finally gathered again, at my family's old house, now legally mine, but emotionally still theirs. Clara greeted me at the door with open arms. No perfume, no performance, just warmth. Dad grilled in the backyard, like old times. Mom fussed over the table. It wasn't perfect. There were pauses, awkward smiles, careful words. But it was real. When dinner ended, my father raised a glass. To Sarah, not just for her success, but for teaching us what it truly means to rise. The clinking of glasses echoed softly, and for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt home. That night, as I drove back to my penthouse, I didn't think about revenge anymore. I thought about growth, about how pain had shaped me, but never defined me, about how silence had been my greatest weapon. Standing on my balcony again, the wind whispering through my hair, I whispered a final truth. Revenge isn't about making others fall. It's about rising without asking for permission. And as the city lights blinked below, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally found peace in the victory I never had to shout about. A year later, I found myself back at the same country club where everything had begun. The chandeliers still sparkled, the same pianist still played, and the same people still talked too loudly about their importance. Only this time, the invitations carried my name at the top. People who once ignored me now hurried to greet me. Sarah, so wonderful to see you again. Their smiles were bright, but their eyes told the truth. They were afraid to be forgotten. As I stood there, I realized the circle had turned completely. I was the one they wanted approval from. And for the first time, I didn't crave it. I just smiled, shook their hands, and thought, you'll never know how powerful it feels to stop needing anyone's permission to shine. That night, I received an unexpected message. A school in my old neighborhood wanted me to speak to their students about believing in yourself when no one else does. The irony made me laugh, because back then I was one of those kids, too quiet, too curious, too different. So I said yes. If even one young dreamer could see that success doesn't require permission, the journey would mean something bigger than revenge. When I walked into that dusty gym, the echoes of my past met me. The old trophy case, the same faded banner, the scent of chalk and floor polish. The students looked at me with wide, skeptical eyes. To them, billionaires lived on another planet. So I told them the truth about the laughter, the doubt, the endless nights coding alone in a guest house everyone pitied me for. I told them that revenge was not about hate, but about creation. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one small hand rose. Miss Sarah, a girl asked, "So, you forgive them?" I smiled softly.
Yes.
Because forgiveness isn't saying they were right. It's saying they don't control me anymore. After that day, I started visiting more schools. One speech turned into a program, and the program turned into a foundation. I wasn't just investing in companies anymore. I was investing in people. Young women, especially, who reminded me of myself. Each time one of them succeeded, I felt another piece of my old anger melt away. Maybe revenge begins with proving them wrong, but healing begins with helping others prove themselves right. Clara came to see me one rainy afternoon. She looked different, simpler clothes, softer eyes. "I'm teaching now," she said. "Finance. I want to help young people understand money before the world uses it against them." I smiled. "You've changed." "So have you," she said. "Except now you smile for real." We laughed quietly. It wasn't the laughter of competition anymore. It was the sound of sisters finally learning to exist on the same side. One weekend I visited the old guest house. Dust on the windows, quiet everywhere. This was where I'd written the first line of code that changed everything. This was where the world called me a failure. I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind through the trees, and whispered, Thank you for being my silence when no one else believed in me. Then I locked the door gently, closing not just a place, but a chapter of my life. Not everyone was happy with my calm success. Investors wanted me to launch louder campaigns, bigger moves, riskier plays. Sarah, one said, you could double your fortune in a year if you push harder. But I remembered how hollow the chase had felt before. Money isn't the goal anymore, I told him. Peace is. He laughed nervously, not understanding. And I smiled, because the moment people stop understanding your peace, you know you've truly grown beyond their noise. A year later, I stood on stage again, this time to receive a national award for innovation and philanthropy. The lights, the cameras, the applause. It should have thrilled me. But all I could think of was that girl at the dinner table, fighting tears while her family mocked her dreams. The announcer said, and here is Sarah Cole, proof that quiet persistence can change the world. When I looked into the crowd, I saw Mom and Dad standing together, tears glistening. And I knew this moment wasn't revenge. It was redemption. After the ceremony, my parents came backstage. Mom hugged me first, holding on too long. Dad wiped his eyes, embarrassed but proud. I wish we had seen you sooner, he said. You did, I whispered. You just didn't know what you were looking at. We laughed through our tears. The years of pride, pain, and distance all melted into that one embrace. Sometimes revenge ends not with triumph, but with tenderness. One quiet night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker below. Everything I once wanted, to be seen, to be respected, had already happened. And yet, life still stretched wide before me, full of unknowns. I realized that revenge had carried me to this mountain, but compassion would decide what I did at the top. So I whispered to the wind, I'm done proving. Now I'm creating. The stars above didn't answer, but somehow I knew they were listening. And just like that, the story of my revenge ended so that the story of my purpose could finally begin. People often ask when I knew I had truly moved on. It wasn't during the award ceremony or the first million in my account. It happened one ordinary morning when I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about proving anyone wrong in months. The silence in my mind was complete. No echoes of judgment, no replay of dinner table laughter, just peace. I brewed my coffee, opened my balcony doors, and smiled. That, I thought, is the real victory. A brown envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten note from a young woman named Layla. You don't know me, but your story saved me. I was about to quit school. Then I watched your talk. Now I'm building my own app. I sat still for a long time after reading it. My revenge had started as a storm. Now it had become a bridge. That was the kind of legacy worth leaving. One weekend, I visited the country club again, this time unannounced. The same waiter who once ignored me recognized me instantly. Miss Cole, he said, nearly dropping his tray. I smiled kindly. Just Sarah today. He grinned. You still own this place, right? Yes, I said. But sometimes it's good to remember when I didn't. Walking through those halls, I realized how small they seemed now. Success hadn't made me taller. Perspective had made the room smaller. A journalist wanted to write a feature titled From Guest House to Global. During the interview, she asked, if you could go back, would you change anything? I thought about it carefully. No, I said. Every insult, every doubt, they were the weight that built my muscle. She smiled. So your revenge worked? It did, I replied. But not because they suffered. Because I stopped needing them to. One afternoon, a man waited in my office lobby, Mr. Grant, the banker who once refused me a loan. He looked older, humbled. Miss Cole, he said softly, I came to apologize. I judged you too soon. I offered him tea. You taught me something too, I said. That rejection is just redirection. He nodded, tears in his eyes. That was closure, the kind that doesn't demand pain, only understanding. Construction had started on the new Sterling Innovation Campus, a place where young minds could build freely. Standing there, watching workers raise the first steel beam, I felt a surge of pride. This, I whispered, is what revenge becomes when it grows up. Because vengeance fades, but creation lasts. Mom suggested we start a family charity. At first I hesitated. The word family still carried old shadows, but I agreed. We called it the Second Chance Fund. It helped small dreamers get their first shot, the one I was denied. At the launch, Dad spoke publicly for the first time. My daughter taught me that support should never depend on appearances. Applause filled the room, but what filled my heart was something quieter: respect. Late one night, I stood before the mirror in my penthouse. The woman staring back looked peaceful, not powerful. And that was new. For years I'd measured my worth by what I could prove. Now I measured it by how gently I could live. I whispered to my reflection, "You did it. You turned pain into purpose." And for once, the reflection smiled first. 5 years later, Clara and I returned to the guest house together. We opened the old windows and let the wind sweep through. "It smells like beginnings," she said. I laughed. That's exactly what it is. We left the door unlocked this time, for anyone who might need a quiet place to start their own impossible dream. On the anniversary of my company's founding, I wrote one last note to myself. Revenge built the stairs. Forgiveness let me climb them. Purpose taught me what to see from the top. I pinned it above my desk, because in the end, the story was never about humiliation or triumph. It was about transformation. And that, I realized, is the sweetest revenge of all, to outgrow the need for it. Years passed, and my foundation became home to hundreds of young dreamers. Every hallway buzzed with ideas, inventions, art, hope. Sometimes I'd walk through quietly, listening to their laughter echo off the walls. That sound healed me more than any apology ever could. One girl stopped me once and said, "Miss Sarah, I want to be like you." I smiled softly. Don't. Be better than me. Dream with peace, not pain. That's when I knew the next generation didn't need revenge to find their fire. They had light of their own. I was invited to give a global talk on perseverance. The audience was huge, cameras, lights, thousands of faces. But I didn't speak about money or awards. I spoke about rejection, how it tastes, how it burns, and how it can be used to rise. I ended with one line that came straight from my scars. If they silence you, build something that speaks louder. The crowd stood, clapping until my voice trembled with gratitude. That night, messages poured in from around the world, and for the first time, I felt like my pain had become a language others could understand. A filmmaker reached out. He wanted to create a documentary called The Girl Who Built Her Own Table. At first, I hesitated. I didn't like reliving the betrayal, the mockery, the loneliness. But he said something that stayed with me. Your story isn't about revenge anymore, Sarah. It's about resilience. So I agreed. We filmed for months. Quiet scenes, soft words, no exaggeration. Just truth. When it aired, it wasn't a storm of drama. It was a whisper that reached millions. But success brings shadows. Soon, imitators appeared, people copying my work, twisting my name, using it for their gain. At first I felt the old fire return, the urge to fight, expose, destroy. But then I stopped. This time, I didn't want to waste peace on war. I simply outgrew them with grace. Sometimes, silence is the strongest reply. One day, a quiet boy named Daniel joined the program. He was bright but angry, just like I once was. He reminded me of my old self. Sharp eyes, quick temper, a mind that wanted to prove something. One evening, he told me, "They don't believe in me. I'll show them." I smiled gently. "Don't show them, Daniel. Show yourself." It took him months to understand. But when he did, his inventions began to shine brighter than his rage. Rumors began to spread that I was retiring. People whispered, investors panicked, media speculated. Sarah Cole is stepping down. Has she lost her fire? No, I hadn't lost it. I'd simply found warmth where there used to be flames. I told my team, I'm not leaving. I'm learning to lead quietly. Because leadership doesn't always shout. Sometimes it teaches by calm example. Clara and I organized a small reunion. Old friends, old rivals, everyone who had once doubted or supported me. To my surprise, nearly everyone came. We laughed, shared memories, and even cried a little. One man approached me, the same person who once told me I'd never make it. He said, "I was wrong. You proved all of us wrong." I smiled kindly.
You weren't wrong about me.
You were right about who I was then. But people change. Forgiveness flowed like music that night. It didn't erase the past. It just stopped it from echoing. Then, one of my partner companies collapsed due to corruption. Not mine, but their greed stained my reputation. For a few weeks, headlines screamed, "Sarah Cole's empire under question." Old fears whispered again. "They'll drag you down, Sarah."
But I faced it differently this time.
I released a calm statement, took responsibility for what I could, and helped the affected employees rebuild. The truth rose slowly, but it rose. And when it did, people admired the silence I had once feared. Years later, I visited my grandmother's grave, the woman who once told me, "The quiet ones always win in the end." I placed white lilies on her stone. "Grandma," I whispered, "you were right. But winning doesn't feel like I thought it would. It feels softer." The wind brushed against my cheek like her old hands once did, and I smiled, knowing peace had finally replaced the hunger. That night, I returned to the same balcony where everything had begun, the city lights below, endless and alive. I thought about the girl who once sat here crying and the woman who now sat here healing. If she could see me now, she'd understand. Revenge was never about making them suffer. It was about finding the self they tried to bury. So I raised my glass to the stars and whispered, to the pain that built me, to the peace that freed me, and to the silence that taught me everything. The wind carried my words away, and I let it, because the story was complete. One morning, I opened my inbox and froze. A message sat at the top, from Ethan, the man who had once broken my heart and humiliated me before the world. He wrote, "I've seen what you've become. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to talk. Not as the man who hurt you, but as someone who finally understands what he lost." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Old memories whispered, but this time, they didn't sting. They just echoed. After all these years, the final ghost had come knocking. Clara found me staring at the email that afternoon. "Are you going to reply?" she asked. "I don't know," I said softly. Part of me wants to ignore it. Another part wants to see if he's truly sorry. She looked at me carefully. "Make sure you're meeting him for peace, not proof." That night, I sat by the window, watching rain trace the glass. For once, I didn't feel anger, just curiosity. Has time changed him? The way it changed me? So I replied, "Let's talk. One last time." We met at a quiet cafe by the sea. The same man, but different eyes. Tired, slower, carrying a weight I didn't need to add to. He looked up as I sat down. "Sarah," he breathed, "you look peaceful." "I am," I said simply. He apologized, truly apologized, not with excuses, not with charm. He spoke of regrets, lost time, and sleepless nights. And I realized something strange. I didn't need to forgive him, because I already had. Revenge had ended long ago. Now there was only release. After our talk, we walked along the shore. The wind was gentle, the waves small and steady. He said, "You built everything they said you couldn't." I smiled faintly.
Yes.
"And you helped." He frowned. "I did." "Of course," I said. "You taught me who not to be. You taught me what I'd never accept again." He nodded, quiet. And that silence, that still, wordless moment, was our real goodbye. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the mirror again, looking at the woman I'd become. For years, I'd chased victory. Then I'd chased peace. Now I felt something different, completion. Life wasn't about proving anymore. It was about living kindly, even to the people who once broke me. I whispered, maybe that's what revenge really means, to rise so gently that even your enemies are forced to respect your peace. The foundation kept growing. We launched global scholarships under one motto: Build, even if no one believes. Every student who succeeded carried a piece of my story without knowing it. And every time one of them sent me a thank you letter, I whispered the same thing. You owe me nothing. Just pass it on. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you leave within. Then life reminded me that it always keeps the final say. I fell ill one winter. Exhaustion, stress, a heart that had carried too much for too long. Doctors told me to slow down. For the first time in years, I had to sit still, away from meetings, screens, and schedules. Lying there, watching sunlight crawl across my ceiling, I realized something I had spent years building, but rarely resting. Maybe the final lesson wasn't about revenge or success. Maybe it was about balance. During my recovery, I wrote letters, not goodbyes, but blessings. One for Clara, one for Daniel, one for the students who'd become like my own children. Each letter began the same way. Never let bitterness become your fuel. It burns bright, but it burns fast. Writing those words felt like breathing out the last of my old fire. I wasn't dying, I was shedding. When I returned to work months later, I announced something unexpected. I was handing the foundation's leadership to a new generation. People gasped. Sarah, are you retiring? I smiled.
No.
I'm evolving. On my last day, Daniel gave me a small wooden box. Inside was a key. What's this? I asked. He said, to the guest house. We restored it. It's now a home for dreamers who have nowhere to start, just like you once did. Tears filled my eyes. It was the perfect circle. That evening, I stood before the guest house again, freshly painted, full of laughter from young hearts. The same trees whispered in the wind, the same skies stretched above me. I sat on the porch steps, closed my eyes, and listened. No anger, no noise, no ghosts, just peace. My story had begun in silence, burned through storms, and ended right back in the calm. I whispered to the night, let them remember not the revenge, but the rise. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting gold across the world. And as the stars appeared one by one, I finally understood. The most beautiful revenge is a life that no longer needs one.
The end.
Thank you, my dear friends, for taking time to watch and feel this story. Your love and support mean everything. Come back for more touching, true life stories. More lessons, more emotions, more life. Subscribe and stay with us.
God bless. And
Shalom.